Hello, this is Darth Nihilus. Welcome to the Abyss. Tonight's show I will be having on Audra Milos as a special guest co-host, and I will have a other special guest, Duran Wayside, who will be our special guest for the evening. So with that, give a quick shout out to our guest, Duran Wayside. There we go. Hello.
What's good?
Not much. How about you?
Was good until my headset stopped working. 1 second.
Okay, hold on. All right.
You can hear me, right?
Hello. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, that's not working. Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you guys. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Good. Right on.
I'm like the Sprint guy.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, shit.
All right, so tonight's topic is magic and anarchy. And
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of have you give us a brief little definition of both for us.
You want mine?
Yeah.
God. I really like Crowley's definition of magic being the science and art of causing change to occur in conformity with will. It's a good one. I mean, there's a lot of definitions I think out there of magic, but academically speaking, and I'm no academic, I'm a dropout, but I think that one's the most sound in hermetic context, at least. Anarchism, that one tends to be tricky because there's a lot of different takes on it. You know what I mean? From the leftist context, from the post-leftist context. It rubs shoulders with socialism sometimes. It has rubbed shoulders with nationalism a couple times in its history, which has been terrifying, but we'll go through this. Anarchism for me has always been a declaration of war for power struggles. Usually it has to do with the underdog, the people who aren't at the top of the pyramid. In fact, I think anarchism is, to my understanding, predisposed to dismantle that pyramid, that hierarchy of power. We don't like that shit. I don't like that shit. That's what I got into it for. So I think combined together, damn, that's some psychedelic shit. You know what I mean? Like you can go to the festival, Burning Man, and experience that for maybe a week, or you can make it a lifestyle choice. It can be done.
Right. So you kind of brought up the fact that there are like different schools of thought when it comes to anarchism, and I know there's, of course, the classics, anarcho-communism, anarcho-syndicalism, Peter Kropotkin, Mikhail Bakunin, those kind of streams of thought, which are very, mainstream within anarchism. And then you have the more fringe stuff like anarcho-primitivism, where it's just like, it gets to the point where, save the planet, kill yourselves,
Yeah.
But how does anarchism, your view of anarchism, connect to magic as causing change in conformity with will?
I think magic, or schools of magic, or many good schools of magic, have a process of individuation, or that are centered around processes of individuation. And I think for people to come to the conclusions, I hate to say they need to, but they need to in the cheesy leftist parlance, throw down their shackles and seize the means of productions and overthrow the dominance hierarchy. You need to individuate. The systems of slavery that have been across this planet forever have always relied upon paradigms, paradigms of control, paradigms of direction, paradigms of whatever. And to individuate, at least in the anarchist context, you need to be able to separate from that shit, find out your own core thing to say that I don't need the master's narrative. I don't need that book that he gave me that says, no, this is supposed to be this way. When deep down in my gut,
I wonder if that's why a lot of magical practices and Thelema type themes of religion and stuff like that has been like banned and outlawed, and like the conservatives are just so afraid of it. It's because, the more people will participate in this, the more they'll start to wake up and be like, hey, maybe I don't need the man with his boot on my neck anymore, and they don't want that.
I would hope so. I mean, I think there's still schools of magic out there that people are doing just to have fun with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe the message isn't maybe the message is similar or the same, but not necessarily overt. I mean, I've seen some pretty crystal shop Wicca that's just like, all right, we're vibing this, and it's a blast and a good time. Politics hasn't brought up a single moment in the evening. Had a great time, I think that in and of itself is an anarchist movement.
It is, yeah. Just the idea of like being able to practice your own magic and to find communities with other people and have discussions like this. Even just that is like, I don't know.
I think what you just said there is a valuable thing to keep in mind in the movement of anarchism is communities, self-decided communities, intentional communities.
Yeah, communities that are like, making decisions with each other for what's good for them instead of, people on the higher ups or whatever thinking they know what's good for all of us and things like that.
Exactly. That's yeah.
And you guys were pointing out earlier how people don't the institutions don't want generally people in power don't want people capable of free thinking and stuff like that, and that they have done a lot to squash that.
Yeah.
Final history lesson. Carl Germer, who was one of the OHOs of the OTO, was actually imprisoned in a concentration camp by the Nazis during World War II. Yep. So
wow.
Yeah, Thelema definitely has a history of not being very popular with any kind of ruling institution.
Well, it kind of like dabbles into free thought, and I do my own magic. It has to do with studying on your own and talking to other people about this, and they don't want that because then you might throw down your shackles or whatever.
God forbid.
God forbid.
God forbid.
And that kind of reminds me of a quote by Wolfgang von Goethe, when he said that, I might be paraphrasing here a little bit, but he said that those who are enslaved that don't see their change, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up that quote later, but it's definitely very what's the word?
Grim. No, I'm kidding.
Well, grim. It's grim.
Most people, in our society, they don't notice the systems of control that are put in place.
It's illegal to collect rainwater in some states. Like, what is that stupid shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why? Like, oh my God.
Marriage licenses.
Yeah.
The fact that we need a license to, say what you will about the institution of marriage. We could do that all night. The fact that they're making us have licenses to declare it publicly, like
paying the government, because I think people think it's free to get married. You have to pay the government a fee to get that marriage license, and they can deny you the license. So it's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Scary
Government control and all that.
Same
scary shit
thing with
at the institution. What was that?
it's the same thing with divorce.
Yeah.
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 The institution of marriage licenses, if I remember correctly, studying the subject started to prevent interracial marriages.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I did not know that. I'm getting a lot of history lessons here.
That
I love marriage, but
you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in our modern day that was, you know, its origin stemmed from racism. Police, for instance,
Yeah.
stemmed from slave patrols. You know, I mean, but
touching back on Magick and Anarchy, though, a lot of enslaved people and a lot of immigrants brought, you know, their magic over here and used some of it to, you know, get away. So that's good, at least. And some more Magick meets Anarchy.
it's weird how traditionalism becomes this weird concept zone in reclaiming your identity, but also using identity to impose on others.
Yeah.
The tradition, this is the white way to be, or the Christian English speaking.
Yeah.
I don't listen to those people, so I don't know what they really say, but I'm sure you're both familiar with them.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Our way is the right way, and all the other ways are savage and beneath us and whatnot.
Yeah, hard path.
And that's the one thing I love about Thelema is that it's not very rigid dogmatically. I mean, there are some basic fundamentals, but for the most part, from my understanding, it's very kind of like, you know, you find your own path within that umbrella that is Thelema. Yeah. And what's interesting is most Thelemites are not even really members of the OTO. I mean, the OTO is the largest Thelemic organization within the religion, spiritual philosophy, whatever you want to call it. But the vast majority are not actually members of the OTO. They're a part of they're part of smaller groups, or they're solitary. Many of them are solitary. So, like, when it comes to anarchism, how do you incorporate magic, into your practice?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that's one of the things that you and I started talking about initially a long time ago. And at first you were like, kibosh, let's discuss it in a big thing, because that sounds like a lot to unpack, and it is. And it's got some dark sides to it, I think, for the people that started coining the term ontological anarchism back in the 60s and the 70s. Fun time, heated time. A great time if you were an individual who had a predatory nature to get away with a lot of shit, unfortunately. And that doesn't exclude our community of anarchists or occultists or whatever. We're still, I don't know if we're trying to purge, but we're still trying to figure that shit out. Learning about the first anarchist who started writing about ontological anarchy, to my experience, we found out years later he was a predator, which was saddening and completely heartbreaking. But, you know, you can't deny what exists in the heart, even if it was said by somebody disgusting. Crowley wasn't always necessarily a savory, PC, happy, whatever individual. That's not the subject at hand. Let's get into the definition of ontological anarchism. Anarchism through experience. Anarchism through an experiential mechanism that isn't necessarily rhetoric thrown around in the gutter or in a classroom at college or whatever. It's I'm smoking weed down by the river, and I just got done reading a Zen book, and I'm getting off on that, and nobody has anything to do with it. No form of authority has anything to do with it. Nobody's got a gun to my head saying, you will fucking read the Tao Te Ching, and you will enjoy that purple Hindu Kush.
Yeah.
Did it all on my own. I think a lot of people in Magic call shit like that, where you just kind of figure shit out for yourself, and it's wondrous and glistening and shimmering and amazing, ineffable. So when the ineffable becomes anarchist, or when the anarchism is found to be ineffable, where do you go from there? Are you still political, or is it spiritual? What is it? The two can be as one.
Right.
To say in some kind of Disney way of speaking.
Self-care like that, getting high and reading a book and, watching the water and being in nature by yourself, nobody's telling you to do shit. That is magical. And that is a practice of magic that I think a lot of people don't think is a form of anarchy. It's just like almost sort of meditating and just being within your own body and just like, I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah.
Think of that.
It's a spiritual experience. I feel that when I'm like alone in nature, just meditating, I just feel so one with everything, and I just feel, I can't also help but feel this weird, like, I know the government doesn't want me to feel like this. Like, I know the higher ups don't want me to feel this way, like this connected to everything. And they want me to be, overworked and tired. And, they don't want me to think about things deeply.
Isolated.
And by myself. And
they don't.
So I take that time to just kind of enjoy it. Self-care is magic to me.
That's very true. I was going to say, the people and the ruling class does not want anybody capable of critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
To coin George Carlin there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I miss him. I would give anything to have him back.
Yeah.
If he came back to life and saw the way our world is, he's like, okay, I'm going.
Yeah, he's like, I'm done. No.
Fuck this shit.
I will off myself.
Yeah. Right. He's now, like, I'm out.
He was sober towards the end of his life. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
Yeah, he even quit smoking cigarettes. Fucking madman. Another point to magical anarchism, the egregore. There seems to be a feeling, there seems to be getting together with a bunch of people dressed in black that you barely even know each other. Maybe you don't even really trust each other, but so far you've declared that you have the same agenda at hand. And maybe that has to do with fighting the powers that be, some nights even directly, for fear of tear gas, billy clubs, and angry dogs. But that in and of itself, in the way that a peyote vision experience, I think, it is a spiritual experience. If you go to a riot on enough mushrooms, that can be spiritual.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Absolutely.
You said something I wanted to touch on a little bit, about my brain is foggy tonight, people.
Oh, dude.
It's all good.
Dude.
Feel that all the time.
Well, you were talking about how political activism can be a spiritual experience. And, I never really looked at it that way. But then again, when I was politically active, I wasn't exactly spiritual at the time. It wasn't until stepping away from politics that I sought out a more metaphysical fulfillment in life. And coming to Thelema made me kind of reevaluate my political leanings, because, long story short, I was, for the longest time, I was a tanky, and I realized that it was, for all intents and purposes, a cult, not just a personality, but I would say that people who defend the Holodomor are no different than people who deny the Holocaust.
Those motherfuckers.
In my
Yeah.
So, and you know, a lot. And what's interesting is that I'm seeing some of the people, the former people that I associated with, become third positionist Duganites and lapping up everything Putin's saying, and it's just like,
I remember that.
And it's just like, what happened? You know, it's like they took, and that's the thing about imperialism that I find very interesting with the left, in particular in this country, is that they take a position on imperialism to such an extent that they become imperialist for another country.
Yeah.
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 You know,
like,
whether it be Russia or China or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
They become defenders of other nation states.
I kind of feel like Europe's been doing that about who's Rome. You know what I mean? Who runs the trademark of power during the vacuum when Rome's bifurcated, and then wait a minute, exactly who's Rome? Who gets is it a Latin speaking? Is it German speaking? Is it French speaking?
Yeah.
Is it the Orthodox Church? Is it the Anglican Church?
I mean, and this is all. Oh fuck! What am I thinking of? This sounds like brand warfare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if the way Subway works, there's so many different like privately owned. God, I can't believe I'm using Subway as
like a war metaphor.
but realistically, let's say like one private franchise with Subway starts like I think this is against their branding rules, but if they randomly like rebrand themselves just a little, and then suddenly that form of Subway is more successful than all the other fucking forms of Subway. Let's say one McDonald's, it's gonna be in LA, starts doing a vegan burger before all the other McDonald's in 2023. They already have one now, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. See, I was good. I'm at be forewarned, moving forward, I'm very antiquated and out of touch with reality, so I'm going to miss little things like that.
That's okay.
That's okay. I'm about as warm. Well, I wouldn't say I dislike vegan food. I will say I will try vegan food to a certain extent.
I like most vegan food. I can't tell the difference.
I had chocolate cake one time, and I was rather impressed.
I never met chocolate cake I didn't like, so.
I don't like chocolate cake. Yeah, I know. I love that among like heretics and Thelemites are like, blasphemy, heresy, he doesn't like chocolate. I'm like, really, people? The things you do on Saturday night on mescaline and absinthe? No, don't even come to me with your shit. That being said, I will eat an entire party-sized sleeve of Starburst without any fucking regret. I do not care.
No remorse. Got to.
No remorse. Kill them all.
To get back a little bit. Not that I didn't like the off topic
food war metaphors. Yeah.
Now, do you work with chaos magic? Yeah.
So I actually, no offense to either of you, I really don't necessarily identify as a Thelemite. I've tried identifying a lot of, and this is actually kind of a cusp of something I've been working on the past 6 to 8 months. I'm going to be 37 in July, and that's been tripping me out. Yeah, it's been tripping me out hard in the retrospect of where I've been, where I've lived. Although, right? You're like, what the hell have I done? And I don't know how to make sense of shit. So to do that, part of that is identity play.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm a Thelemite. Sometimes I wonder if I'm even really truly an anarchist.
I've wondered about that myself, honestly. and I seen a really great. I don't remember who posted the meme or where I saw it. Was I'm anti-authoritarian in the sense that the only authority I identify with is my own.
Yeah.
Or the only one I accept is my own.
The thing is, I treat my identities and stuff like the vernacular and the language and the terminology and stuff is always changing and developing and progressing, or sometimes we go back to words and words lose and then find their meaning again and stuff. So I try to treat these identities and labels kind of like feelings. They're just passing through. They're not permanent or tattooed on my soul or here to stay. If I call myself something this year, in 10 years, I might look back and be like, oh, remember when I joined that thing or something? So,
I mean, that's chaos magic, baby.
Yeah.
One works for me. You're practicing Zen, and the next minute you're doing the Catholic novenas and doing the whole Latin shit. So it's the point of chaos magic for me, or at least the way I see it, is that it's more about the spiritual journey, about expanding and challenging yourself spiritually, than it is about any kind of rigid formula. Because the minute you stick to a rigid formula, you become accustomed to it, and it becomes repetitive, and you kind of lose that challenge for yourself to because the way I look at it is that if it's outside of your comfort zone, that's when the real magic happens.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong.
No, I think you're on point.
Yeah, I mean, growth is sometimes very uncomfortable.
I think you're on point because it literally for a minute felt like you were channeling Bruce Lee there for a minute, who was not just an anarchist but also a chaos magician, kids. He was talking, if you read Tao Te Ching, a lot of the philosophical shit he came up with, he was a huge stoner. He wasn't just subtly explaining what we would later understand as forms of chaos magic, but also crypto-anarchism in a very, again, that ineffable. The Taoists are really good about speaking about shit you couldn't speak about because they've probably been doing it forever. In fact, I still think the Tao Te Ching is probably a huge, important primer for pan-anarchism, for the greater understanding of anarchism. Again, a spiritual method of understanding something political in nature.
Yes.
So in that regard, I guess, to go back to what you were asking, chaos magic, I think, is, I don't think I can call whatever I do anything else. I've tried when I was going through certain phases. I remember going through a phase of, this is Tibetan Hermeticism. Yeah, that's what this is. I loved that. When I was living in Oregon for a period of time and reading runes for Spanish migrants for beer and weed, I was calling myself a little bit of a boxcar shaman. Because that's what it felt like. It was immigrant informed. It was multilingual. It wasn't just Norse. It wasn't just for white people. It was kind of like, this is a melting pot. And nobody here wants to be sober, so let's make this work.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
nice. I like that community togetherness.
I agree with that. That anarchism doesn't just have to be packaged understood in a political context. It can be understood in a spiritual context as well, and a lifestyle and personal philosophy. Anarchism is very multifaceted in that regard.
I think to the degree where people, if you're not careful and if you're not open-minded, there's gatekeepers in anarchism and there's gatekeepers in chaos magic. It fucking sucks. And I feel like if people aren't careful, I saw this in Portland a lot, which was part of my decision of leaving ultimately. Too many people want to own, I think we were just talking about this again a couple minutes ago, owning that narrative, owning that monopolizing on those definitions when they're not supposed to be definitive.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not the ultimate truth or something.
Yeah. No.
We have a problem even within Thelema. Gatekeepers are everywhere. They're in every
group.
Paradigm and school of thought. But we have that problem in Thelema too, with people who try to control the narrative of what Thelema is. What determines. I mean, there's people in the Thelema community that don't think I'm a Thelemite. Because I don't subscribe to their definition of what Thelema is, and it's hilarious. I mean, at the very least, my view is that a person who is a Thelemite is a person who is A, following their true will, and B, who accepts the law of Thelema. And that includes, the book of the law to a certain extent. I still debate with myself all the time whether, I think Crowley was a prophet or whether the book of the law was divinely inspired or, the ramblings of a madman. I don't really, I debate that. And I don't look at Crowley as like a saint or as, I don't treat Crowley like Tankies treats Stalin.
Yeah.
I have a thought about the road you're going down with that, and I like it, and I think this is why it works, but I've seen this Thelema works this way, and that a lot of people are like, look, I don't agree with everything he said or did, but we're still going to do this, and we're just not going to do that horrible shit. And I think that's kind of why Crowley did a lot of the things he did. You know what I mean? That's the trick in that weird dark messianic kind of way. It's like, look, you don't have to do this. I'm only doing this shit to prove that you don't have to.
Yeah.
Or that I can. I'm not going to be smote by God. And I think that's why Thelema seems to be so successful, is that it's like, this isn't about Crowley, this is about Thelema. If you want to talk about Crowley, you can go talk about Crowley in a Crowley circle. This is about Thelema. That's cool. That's anarchistic.
Right. But yeah, for me, you can't separate Crowley from Thelema, but you have to come to Crowley with a critical mind. I think the best way I look at it, quote from Mark Passio. He said that do as I say, not as I do, and that's the perfect way of looking at Crowley when it comes to using various methods of magic that he did. So that's kind of the way I do it. And for me, Thelema is about the individual path itself. It's about how you relate to your true will, and that's the end of it. There is nothing else there. There is no other forms of doctrine or lines of doctrine that you have to follow except following your true will. And however you define that or determine that is yours to determine.
It bums me out to hear that a lot of Thelemites get kind of exclusive and gatekeepy and stuff, just because, the whole, the vibe I get from Thelema is very, you're free to be yourself. So it's weird that some people in that community kind of have this, you're free to be yourself as long as I approve it kind of a thing.
It's kind of like the line that Bill Hicks used to say, where he said, you are free to do as we tell you. You are free to do as we tell you.
In the military, they say volunteer.
Because we said so.
But yeah, so and that's the other thing with Thelemites is that Thelema even the modern Thelemic movement has a lot of predators, a lot of people who prey, especially on especially on women, and women, throughout, women have been very pivotal in the history of Thelema, whether it be Leah Hersig or Layla Waddle or Jane Wolfe or Sorrel Merrill or Phyllis Seckler. These women were definitely prominent within the Thelemic movement and advanced it to what it is now, but that those figures are almost kind of treated like an afterthought, both by Crowley and by some of his contemporaries. And even within the modern Thelema movement, women are still kind of treated as second-class citizens within the movement. And that's kind of what, I've been trying to do with my Abbey and with this channel and stuff, is to create a space where people who are interested in the occult and interested in Thelema and paganism overall in general have a place to feel included in, And I feel like that's also a part of the anarchist philosophy and outlook.
Absolutely.
It can be. I think the smoke another one, Cheech. It's like you said, there's gatekeeping and everything, and I think in the 90s and the 2000s we saw, curiously enough, not in the 2010s, in the 1910s and the 1920s we saw a definite shift, schism with anarchism in the left. It was around about the time. It was well after the time Marx technically kicked anarchists out of the Intercom, or the International, or whatever you want to call it. And we saw it again in the 90s, the 80s, 90s, and technically again in the 2010s. And that kind of aided. It had to do with that. It was response to gatekeeping with people with their own, like, look, I got my own prejudices. I got my own things I need, my own traumas, my own troubles. I'm all against the power structure, but I need to be away from people. And that scared the shit out of some collectivists back in the day. And when you push back against an isolationist, when you push harder on a person who wants to be left the fuck alone, where at one point in time, or fight back, particularly when it came to the autonomist counter-collectivist form of anarchists, dudes who just wanted to build a compound in the woods and grow weed and have a bunch of guns and dogs. That's not really a lot of people don't want to call those people anarchists anymore. They want to call them libertarians, because I feel like during a period of time, they were. The moment Glenn Beck got into that movement, fuck that guy. I want anybody listening. No, I can't say that on the internet because that becomes a terrorist threat.
Well,
see, this is why I missed the fucking 90s. Doc, your shit just got so much more controversial.
It kind of reminded me of Karl Hess. He was very much an autonomous anarchist. He started with, he was a Reaganite Republican, and then he became a libertarian. And then it's like, he reads Emma Goldman, he's like, "Kid, I'm an anarchist," and he's just, he's fighting the IRS.
Do that to you, okay?
I feel like when I was, because I grew up like in the woods of Maine, on a dirt road with like 7 siblings, and my parents, they weren't ignorant necessarily, but they just didn't. I was very much a product of my environment. So after I left home in my late teens, I started to educate myself more, and I feel like being a libertarian freed me from being a Republican. Like, it's where I got my start, sort of, and then from there I progressed forward. So being a libertarian who goes off into the woods to think for yourself for a little bit can actually kind of turn you into something not better necessarily, but I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it does do that. Does do a thing to people: isolation and exclusivism and gatekeeping. It does that to people. What was that?
It's very Henry David Thoreau.
Yeah.
You know, I whatever motive. Let's lump him into that category. Fuck it. He wasn't. I don't know if he was smoking weed on his little. I don't even know if I could call that a compound, but I definitely damn sure know he wasn't amassing like AK-47s at the yin yang. Although that would have been badass.
He wasn't really removed from society either, you know. I mean, he'd go to town and have you know, dinner at the inn and stuff, you know. He was just out in a small shack by, you know, Lake Walden, you know.
He was just butthurt in the woods a bit. He didn't like go into the woods, you know what I mean? Yeah. He was outside, but he wasn't that outside.
How many rich white kids in Montana did the same thing on their way to finish their bachelor's degree? I mean,
that's true. When worked on a cattle ranch, quote unquote.
Right.
Like, stayed at an Airbnb or whatever.
Look, I worked on a cannabis farm for 2 years, but that doesn't make me a fucking redneck, no matter how hard I try. I tried, goddammit. I bought the boots.
Oh, he bought the boots. Right this way, then,
but yeah. So the interesting thing about to get back to the magic portion of our conversation. Do you incorporate sigils? I mean, I know sigils are very much the one thing that's talked about a lot within chaos magic, and I'm going to sound very novice when I say this, but is there more to chaos magic than sigils as being like the primary?
Oh fuck yeah, dude.
Okay.
Oh fuck yeah. I got a lot of my magical pedigree, my chaos magic pedigree through the Temple of Psychic Youth growing up. So I think I caught on the tail end. I wasn't a big deal. I missed a lot of the cool shit. I'm not a fan of Psychic TV, but Genesis was my homie. So, yeah, sigil magic. Unfortunately, sigil, I don't care how people pronounce it. Again, I'm not going to gatekeep the pronunciation of words. This isn't Cambodian. It's internet gibberish.
It's like when people say data or data. It's like both of them are right to me.
It works for me. Sure. Fuck it. Let's do that. I think because of the whole sigil thing, that got really popular. Because it was the intro. That was the one that everybody was talking about. No one was talking about, okay, how do you create a tulpa, thought form, servitor? I mean, eventually that conversation happened. But, like, at first everybody was just kind of talking about, okay, anybody can think of an idea, and an idea that means something deep to them. And anybody can learn how to make that into a scribbly little bullshit little symbol. And anybody with genitals and hands and arms, fuck, you don't even really need that. Anybody can figure out a way to masturbate onto that and go through that process of thinking that's how it's going to enchant or manifest things into their reality or whatever. And that got really popular at first, and I think for a lot of people who realized that wasn't doing it and someone just tricked you into jerking off onto your sketches, it's kind of like, okay, I can believe in things, but that's not what's going to do it. So either I give this up or I figure out a new way to do what I wanted to occur. And that's the beginning of chaos magic. You can I still jerk off of my scribbles. This keyboard is disgusting. Look, I don't even want to explain what's going on my art station now. But the point is, the point is, sometimes figuring out something isn't quite what works. Doesn't mean it's not real, doesn't mean it doesn't exist, doesn't mean it can't work for you. The scientific method, just find a new way to do it. Do you really want that to occur? Find a new fucking way until it works. And if you don't, then Grant Morrison. I think Grant Morrison once talked about in a documentary about himself that at some point he figured out to go skydiving and drop acid right before you go, so you're peaking on the way out. And he had a sigil scribbled on his chest, and that was the charging mechanism of that sigil, was that he was frying balls and falling out of a fucking airplane at 1,800 feet.
Awesome.
That's definitely chaos magic.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody?
That's fucking peak based magic.
Yeah.
I think in the Kung Fu Bruce Lee, and this is going to be a controversial statement, but anybody who practices complicated firearms training or extensive firearms training, folks like who do shot rooms a lot, fucking Navy SEALs, anytime they go into a room with a stack and they're all fully loaded and they're not really engaging anybody, but they're practicing that's chaos magic. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that is chaos magic.
It requires you to put yourself in this mental space of being in a hostile situation, even though you're not.
Mm-hmm. It's practice. It's you're attaining a mental zone. You're doing, it's kind of, again, it's fucking yoga. It's tantra. You go in with certain hand movements and certain things going in your mind, and you're doing things internally that the three of those activities combine, and the result is I'm a Navy SEAL, or the God of Death, or an avenging Captain America, or whatever those motherfuckers think of when they're doing it.
You should have seen the look on my wife's face when I was doing, pew pew sounds, doing the LBRP, and I was like, but it helped. The sound effects helped me with the of casting the circle and calling forth the angels and all that shit. And he's just sitting there laughing at my ass, thinking, "What the hell are you doing?"
Magic. Go away. No.
Fuck off. Don't play me, Dad. It's magic. It's occultism practiced by Century Syrians. No, I just fucked that whole word up. I think I was trying to say 17. Nope, I can't say it still. Drugs are a wonderful thing. I've had beer and caffeine and marijuana, so God knows where this is going.
Okay, because I've read Liber Null and I've read Psychonaut, which are essential chaos magic texts.
They're pretty pivotal, yeah. It's a good start.
Right. And I plan on diving more into chaos magic, but I wanted to kind of that be the first actual literary cliff dive that I took. I know there's Phil Hines, and then there's other people who have there's other essential reads and stuff like that.
The Psychic Bible by Genesis Porridge, P. Orridge. Anybody who hasn't, get a copy and read it, dude.
I've heard of that book. I also heard there was another one, something cyber something, and
Cybernaut, I think.
Yeah, something to that effect, and it was about using the internet as a platform for conducting chaos magic ritual. And I'm just like, holy shit, that's cyberpunk, right there,
Yeah.
Larry did a book about cyberpunk and internet culture and rave culture back before 99, I think. I have a copy on my headstand. I don't remember what year it was published. That book was a step away from explaining a cybernetic, cyberpunk flavor of chaos magic without intending to do so. And I think the point of me pointing that out is there are a lot of books, literature out there that have value to chaos magic as an operative platform, but they're not advertised or pitched as that. So they're easy to miss if you're not. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee, fucking anything by William S. Burroughs, practically anything by William S. Burroughs, but especially William S. fucking Burroughs. Yeah, there's so much out there. I'd say like House of Leaves is a big.
I have that book. I love that book.
There's a lot of shit in there that I think people who are trying to explore the black hole that is possibilities in anarchism, that's a good way of looking at it. A lesser known title is The Wasp Factory. I would caution that one because it's grotesque as fuck, but it's totally worth it if you're okay with that kind of shit.
It doesn't get into Soylent Green territory, does it?
No. If I remember correctly, The Wasp Factory was about a violently paranoid schizophrenic young man who he's on a private property and he's doing fucked up shit. It includes animal abuse to a degree, so and weird perverse sexuality. So go into that with different. Look it up first. Some people might not be into it, but from what I'm to understand, a lot of the processes that the character goes through in that book is essentially fucking chaos magic.
Yeah.
Ufology. Anything with UFOs in it, you can do something with chaos magic with that.
So, like,
9 times out of 10.
We're talking like Typhonian, like Lamb and Indrid Cold and
Indrid Cold's if you want to fuck around, anything Mothman, any of the old Art Bell shit. I mean, say what you will about whether or not any of that shit is real. It's a paradigm destroyer.
Right.
Play with it. Let's see what happens.
Detroit, where I live, we have our own kind of like Mothman cryptid.
Oh wow.
It's called the Nain Rouge. And
say that again?
It's called the Nain or Nan Rouge. And
okay.
It's little red demon thing that's got red, like these hairless red demon with red eyes.
Oh, wow.
And it's apparently it's a curse attached to the city of Detroit, the land of Detroit, going as far back as the founder of Detroit, of the French settlement that was originally here. Funny enough, his last name was Cadillac, which is the name of the car. But yeah, so we have, and apparently every single major disaster that has ever occurred in the city of Detroit, there was a sighting of the name that precipitated it.
Oh wow, that's scary as hell.
So chaos magic. Let me go ahead and conjure up that dude.
Yeah.
The idea of playing with city gods, spirit gods, shit like that. When I was living in Portland, I learned about that, and I forget what forum or live journal or whatever bullshit that doesn't exist anymore I was reading at the time, but somebody brought up the idea of like they talked about Prague in Czech Republic definitely has a god. Portland definitely has a god, and I'm sure Detroit does too. I don't even want to know what god comes from New York City. That just sounds terrifying. And then there's LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think those things. Paris. I mean, they're energy concentrations of people. If you think about the concept of psychic phenomenon or psychological phenomenon in the magical context, an egregore is going to form probably whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And again, going back to things completely unrelated to chaos magic, Ghostbusters. See?
Good movie.
A good movie and a good example, if I may say so myself.
Right. Anything. Speaking of which, the works of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Jesus.
I love that he, dabbled into Aleister Crowley territory, and like metaphysics and other dimensions and other existence existences just beyond our own, and the fact that there's certain things that our brains aren't even capable or set up to understand.
So
and
the two played off
I
each
love
other.
all of that.
Oh, yeah. Those two played off each other in horrifyingly wonderful ways. Both of them were quite an effective bridge for many people to meet each other. Crowley knew a bunch of different people who ended up valuing each other after Crowley. Lovecraft brought together a bunch of different literarians who probably wouldn't have found each other if it weren't for Lovecraft's collective power. You can almost say that Lovecraft and Crowley are kind of egregorical beings, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does this mean we need to do a seance where we summon the spirit of Lovecraft?
Hope maybe.
It's within
we know a lot about Middle Eastern, Asian magic, a lot about Masonic magic.
He was also a raging xenophobe.
That's what
he hated black people.
Yeah. I heard that he studied
I might want to skip that one now that I think about it.
Yeah.
I feel that his cosmic horror, for one thing, had a lot of xenophobia and racism built into it. When he described, like for example, the fish people of the hybrid fish people of the Shadow over Innsmouth, for example, it almost kind of gives you Orientalism vibes, where he's describing the fish people as kind of in the Asiatic, traits and stuff.
Yeah.
A different note, I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit on the incorporation of Liber Oz, because we kind of touched upon that in a private conversation, and I wanted to kind of, because I hate to spoil this ahead of time,
no.
But I intend on touching on Liber Oz during the month of July, because it's American Independence Day, and I thought, what better way to talk about freedom and rights and stuff than, bring up that and talk about that a little bit.
Very appropriate.
So I wanted to kind of touch with you on that within how Liber Oz, how you incorporate your interpretation of Liber Oz into an anarchistic viewpoint.
And again, this is another thing I think you and I talked about previously. One of the things I think in my anarchist paradigm, I'm not a pacifist. I think it's a loaded phrase to say one is comfortable with violence, but I am. Saying shit like that makes people think, oh, this means that, that means this. I am. Is what it is, what it is. I think I don't see a lot of that conversation of the Law 5 in Liber Oz conversed enough with Thelemites. Man has the right to kill those who would thwart these rights.
Yeah.
When I found Liber Oz, I was still trying to make sense of my anarchism, my magic. Like, am I going to do this or am I going to do that? Because I don't think the two can include each other. It wouldn't make sense if they did. And then I read Liber Oz. And it just felt like a contradiction at first, because I was like, yeah, but I don't like it when people list what I can and can't do. But I like lists. And he didn't list what we can and can't do. He listed all the things we could do with an amendment at the bottom saying, and if anybody says no to them, fuck them. Do it anyway and kill them if you need to. Particularly with Law 5. And I think it's not necessarily the message I want to be the loudspeaker on, because it's such a rough, socially unacceptable one, but violence is fucking inevitable, kids.
Yeah.
When I was doing security work, everybody used to say all the time, oh, you gotta, what's the phrase? De-escalate the situation. You gotta de-escalate the situation so nothing bad happens. Look, that only works if both parties are willing to disengage and de-escalate the situation. If one party's like, nah, I don't give a fuck about if you're uncomfortable. You're littler than me and I want your shit. All of your shit. I don't care what it does to you to take your shit.
Yeah.
Law 5. Law 5. I'm sorry. You have the right.
Yeah.
Put him down.
That kind of reminds me of a a line that Stokely Carmichael said during a news conference, where he talked about nonviolence, and he said nonviolence only works if the other side sees you as a human being.
Yeah. It only works if I take a step forward and you take a step back, then you're not meeting me halfway.
Yeah. Look at the alienation that we felt in this country when we went and did when we went and fought World War II. A lot of idealism behind it. We're fighting for freedom and against fascism and evil, and all that's romantic and beautiful.
Until you read about Operation Paperclip.
Well, and the entire time we did that, our military was segregated. I mean, there were so many fucking positions in the military that weren't. You can't be a midnight pilot if you're black because black people can't see at night, or black people can't join the Navy because they can't swim. Shit like that. It was very real according to the military at the time. So compromising that, like coming back from a theater of war, where like, yeah, we're going to defeat oppression and provide equality and all the shit that America's been saying for the past whenever, only to come back and completely betray those ideals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also like what you said at the beginning, that you don't consider yourself a pacifist and that violence, sometimes it's inevitable. I believe that completely. And the thing is, all that love and gentleness and light, that shit is reserved for me. You will still get knocked the fuck out if you decide to step up. You know what I mean? And I think people see me posting about self-care and, sitting in the woods meditating and softness, and they think, your humbleness can sometimes make people think they can play with you and stuff. Sometimes you gotta let people know. So,
Frater,
two good examples.
No.
What's up?
Real quick. Frater Odd, I follow him on Facebook, and he posted something with regards to Love Under Will. He's been posting some interesting hot takes that I agree with. And he said that basically, to summarize, fuck with a Thelemite and find out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was
like, not only will they beat your ass, but they'll do some magic shit on you and you'll lose your fucking hair. Like, just be nice to people. You never know.
Go ahead.
I don't know. Teth Baphomet posted some really cool shit recently for the trans community with a bunch of AK-47s on it and stuff. I'm a huge fan of the AK-47, and I'm a huge fan of keeping the queer community armed, so I really like that they chose to use that iconography. I think there's a lot of psychology. Symbolism has a lot of psychology in it. It's not just like, oh, I like that because it's titties and A&W and it turns me on. The AK-47 as a firearm says things to people subconsciously. It's traditionally a symbol of uprising.
Because it's always been used. The AK-47 has always been used in wars of liberation. In
theory, yeah.
Yeah.
I really like that representation, but I still feel like there's not enough. I want to see, how do I word this? Of my time spent in Freemasonry in the past, there's definitely been a language in the background of some form of self-defense or militancy as a culture. It's not my place to pick on anybody. I just wish I could see more of that in the Thelemite community.
Yeah.
Because it's there.
Yeah.
It has the fabric. I don't want to say we in any kind of collective term, like you guys need to be on. Things have been really comfortable for a lot of us for way too fucking long. We'd like to think not. That like, oh, no, I've been uncomfortable for my whole life. You have. I have too. That's why we're here. But there's been some balls dropped in the past couple decades, and it shows itself in its participation. I don't know. how to explain exactly what I'm saying.
Take your time. We have no time limit.
We need to remember we have fangs for a reason. Thelemites especially. Thelemites come from a huge, long, beautiful tradition lineage. Chaos magic doesn't have a deep lineage or timeline, and if it does, it doesn't really give a shit about it. It's like, yeah, fuck your lineage, I'm going to change it in 90 days anyway and come up with something new. Thelema, very similar to traditions of self-defense, has a huge, long, rich lineage of tradition and traditions. Whether you're OTO, AA, Ecclesia Babylon, whatever. I think I've talked to Bobby, Pineapple Abbey about this. I want to see a knightly tradition. I want to see, in the way that Masonic groups had in the past, where it's like you do your business in lodge and you get together and you do the business east, north, south, blah, 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 blah. All those degrees and such. We need a Templar.
Yeah, I agree.
We need an organization for paladins. We need God damn it! Why am I saying this shit? It sounds weird, but
no.
Yeah,
he probably talks about the Night Monks of Thelema in multiple passages. I think he refers to them. I want to say in Liber 2, the message of Master Theron, when he's talking about the nature of true will and the nature of love and stuff like that. He refers to the Night Monks of Thelema, and so that definitely, very very well, creating of an order of defenders or whatever you want to call it,
Defenders is a good word. That's the word I was going to use, but I didn't want it to sound funny.
Yeah, because if you're not careful, that shit starts to sound too gatekeepy. But a thing, a language, a space. Back in the day when I was getting into Filipino martial arts, there was the Dog Brothers Society. They turned out to be really right-wing. I love a lot of the shit they taught, but a lot of that mythology, a lot of their philosophy was unfortunately just tragically fucking right-wing. There are people who appreciate martial arts as a practical and as a tantric aspect in the Thelemite, in the occult community. Sex magic is all well and good. Romanticism is all well and good. Love and light is just fine, but there needs to be an open conversation about a culture of self-defense, a legitimate culture of self-defense in the occult community. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go out and learn karate. I'm saying
everyone should know how to defend themselves with this magic or with these practices.
I'm not even just talking about magic. I'm saying understand violence happens in the real world. World. How many Thelemites know how to apply a tourniquet? How many Thelemites know how to operate a Glock 20? How many Thelemites know the difference between caliber? How many Thelemites know how to evade sniper fire? How many Thelemites were there in Q Club?
Yeah, exactly. I think we need trained people in the occult community who know how to, defend against people who don't practice at all, like some fucking conservative who thinks you worship the devil and comes knocking on your door with a gun. Like, you need to know how to kick that motherfucker's ass,
And another thing I want to also point out when it comes to changing, magic being the changing of conformity with will, is that it doesn't just have to be the abstract ritual of the LBRP or conjuration, whether it be Solomonic or Enochian or whatever magic system you're working with. It doesn't have to be in that abstract mental capacity. It can be in the real world. It can be fighting, standing up for a specific cause that you're passionate about, defending those people who are being evicted because of really shitty landlords. You know.
Yeah. Definitely a conversation also that needs to be had.
You know. So I mean, magic can be practical, and it needs to be practical. It needs to be just beyond the confines of the egregore or the system of magic that you're working with.
Yep.
I'd agree to that.
Agreed.
Let's see. It is 8:17. So do you guys want to give some final thoughts real quick and kind of wrap it up a little bit?
I would just like to say that for me, magic is like science that we just don't understand. I like the, philosophical and spiritual part of it, but I also like the physical, tangible part of it that I can experience and study and share with people who aren't necessarily spiritual. And I'm glad that there's room in this community sort of for both, and the recognition of science and the like real world aspect of that part of it. And that's all from me.
I think we should do this again.
Oh, for sure. If you want, you're totally welcome to come on for my July, where we can talk a little bit more about Liber Oz and about.
I mean, July is Leo season, and I'm a Leo, so.
Same here.
Yeah.
Nice, I'm a Capricorn.
All right, you're a Cap. What did you say? You're a Capricorn?
Yeah.
Oh, you're a Capricorn.
Okay. You're invited.
Yeah. I just turned 30 actually this past January.
No, the Saturn return.
I'll be turning the same age he is. 30.
What was that?
I'll be turning 37 in August. The funny thing, I'm both a Leo in the Greek and a tiger in the Chinese zodiac. So I'm a big cat.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So you were born 86, so you were also born the year of the fire tiger. Same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
So fucking 86.
Yeah. All that movie.
It's been so fun talking to you both.
Same here.
Oh, same.
I'm talking with both of you as well. It was nice having you on as a co-host and you as a guest.
Appreciate you guys. Yeah.
And my final thought is, the aim of religion and
method of science.
Method of science.
That's
yes. There. Thank you.
What it is. Yeah. Can't remember there for a minute.
To compliment Audra's statement. And with that, I want to again thank you guys for coming on the show. It was lovely having you.
Yeah.
And 156.93.
Sounds good. All righty, see you guys. Bye.
Bye.